Okay, so welcome to the Executive Coach Mentoring webinar tonight, Ian.
Thank you.
Ian is one out of 10 of our executive coaches who's able to attend tonight. And thank you for apologies from the other 2 people who sent their reply in. Today is Monday the 16th of April 2018, and here we are a quarter of the way through the year already. Amazing. Tonight we're going to continue looking at executive coaching and what that means and what it is. Introductions we don't need because we know each other and you've been to one of our workshops, so that's fine. So what I'd like to talk about now is where are you up to in the course? Well, you and I have just been chatting and I've been congratulating you on finishing Unit 8. So that's,
yes, well, almost. I've got to do the 40-minute. Yeah.
That's right. So you're up to the final coach recording, which is excellent.
Yeah.
And you've certainly been putting the hard work in. You've been going for 38 weeks, which is good.
Yeah.
So after you get through these recordings, there's not, it's pretty much downhill from there. There'll be another recording or so, but you pretty much have it under your belt, I think.
Sure.
Are you happy with how you're progressing?
I'm happy I'm back on track. We had a couple of months where, there was many distractions which drew us away from my timeline, but, I've set some goals now for myself just to get back on track and stay on track.
That's well done. I think over Christmas, January period, a lot of people kind of dropped the ball, which is expected and understandable, which is why you've got 12 months to complete the course. But if you do it between sort of February and November, you probably get through it straight away. But in that Christmas period, it's understandable. You've got family, you've got celebrations and that sort of thing.
For us, it was just a kind of a bit of a drop in clientele where we really had to raise our clientele again, and it's been good. We've had 3 more come on, and we've got another 3 more to come on too, which is taking a bit of the financial stress off. So,
that's good. So what was holding you back? Well, you just explained what was holding you back. It was imperative that you get the business back on track and focus on getting the dollars through the door.
Yep.
So that's wonderful, and you've overcome that by going out there and getting extra clients. So so that was a conversation I was going to have with lots of the other 9 people as well. But in terms of yourself, you're pretty much on track.
Thank you.
So let's look at what executive coaching is. We had a couple of pin dot points last month on executive coaching that was solution focused, goal oriented. Let's go to a formal definition, which is a collaborative partnership relationship between a senior exec and an external, usually executive coach. Now, it's usually external, and you're going to be an external exec coach. In some organisations that I've been talking with, they are even experimenting with reverse coaching, which is of some junior members coaching the executive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is interesting. You can, of course, have peer coaching as well within colleagues or between colleagues. But from the definition that we're talking about and yourself and the others on the course, you'll be an external executive coach to internal senior coaches. And the aim is to enhance the executive's personal and professional performance in his or her role and equip them for succession into the next promotional opportunity. So there's an aspect of career advancement as well in the work that you do with them. We've just had some of our executive coaches into one of the mining companies, and they finished the first round of 6 months, and now one of them is looking for the next round of 6 months, and another is looking to work with his team and coach down through the team through to direct reports. So you just don't know where it's going to go once you get into the organisation and they see how good you are and the results that are coming through. So from a personal development point of view, the executive coaching focus on their ability to inspire and motivate their direct reports and others in the organisation to communicate effectively upwards and across and downwards at all levels of the organisation and build trusting relationships with key stakeholders, both internal and external. So it's not much different from regular coaching. It's just in an executive and an organisational setting. But the personal aspect is still there, as is the professional development aspect, which is probably more dominant in an executive coaching situation, where there's also a focus on professional development for the benefit of the organisation, not just the individual, where you look at strategic drivers to ensure that the organisation's targets are met, as well as on their individual performance in that particular field of excellence, which contributes to the overall strategic direction and success. So it is a developmental process based on feedback generated from primary and secondary sources, such as direct observation of how the executive operates in that C-suite environment, and also information gleaned from 360-degree feedback assessment of his or her personal and professional effectiveness. In any case, it's all evidence-based, so the likes of 360 degrees, DISC, LSI, Hogan, whatever. And the emphasis in the executive coaching course is on the evidence. So it's not good enough to say, okay, we think that this is happening or not. We need to have that evidence from a 360-degree perspective. And then, what organisations will require is a way to measure the effective coaching. So we won't go into that tonight, but that'll be the focus of one of our other webinars as we go through.
Yep. Data always tells a story.
Absolutely. So that's why our executive coaching model is first is assessment and feedback, and then it's looking at coaching for performance to pick up the performance along SMART goals and have they got the skill and the will, etc. So that's an easy one. And in organisations, coaching for performance is probably the foremost reason for coaching. And the next one is probably coaching for development. So they're already performing, they're already doing a good job. They just want to go to the next level or go into succession planning or whatever with that person. So it's a talent management strategy as well as a succession planning strategy. Okay, so you'll have this in your notes, Ian, when you get to that unit of study.
Yep.
Okay. So what we've got is two clients, and we spoke a little bit about this last webinar. You've got the individual, where you're looking at their behaviour, their attitudes, goals, actions, teamwork, conflict, performance results, and obviously that's important. But you've also got to satisfy the need of the organisation to have development of their people, to have them pretty much switched on, looking at the processes and the way the organisation functions, but also contributing to that coaching culture, and hopefully then contributing to transforming the organisation into what the senior team would like it to be, or the board would like it to be. So with those two different clients, you have to satisfy both agendas. We went through last webinar a process to look at that and meet with the two clients together, and then how to negotiate the coaching contract with them. So that was last webinar. Do you have any questions at this point in time, Ian?
No, it's good.
Okay. So what we're looking at is probably going into an organisation to start with, looking at the benefits of coaching. So you can see we have three sort of benefits that we can talk with them about. The benefits at an individual level, which is improved communication, relationships, behavioural change, personal growth. I'd include in there as well self-awareness and insight, because once you get that self-awareness and insight going, all the rest tends to follow. They change their behaviour, they improve their communication. At the recent Melbourne professional coach training program, one of the key things that one of the participants said was how the course had helped her to change her communication. And that was not only with her husband, but with her children as well, and to be a better parent. So anything that you can do to communicate better will have ramifications across everything that you do in life, including the relationships with others. The second set of benefits comes at a team level, where you've got increased cooperation, collaboration, moving into performance improvement, and things like reduced conflict. Now, if you look at that from a HR perspective, that's gold. You don't have the complaints coming through, you don't have people leaving, you don't have to recruit and train the next succession people, because you've got a satisfied workforce who are fully engaged, who are loyal to the organisation and thoroughly committed to what they're doing. So they're the sort of benefits you talk with an organisation about. And finally, from an organisational perspective, the three areas that I think it's the 2015 ICF coaching culture report mentioned. Employee engagement goes up, something like 60% compared with about 43%. Retention of talent is about the same amount, 60% increase retention of talent. And increased productivity from an organisational perspective, it goes up around about that amount as well. So if you look at that from a third more improvement on what it would have been, look at the reduced fallout, and that's where we move then into ROI, which I'll talk to you about at another webinar. Okay. But even just So this is one of the images that we're putting into the book that I'm currently got in draft, and it'll come out in about July, something like that, I think. So there'll be some of these models that are proprietary models that you can take with attribution, obviously, and start to put into your presentations to organisations.
Yep.
Okay. This is another one that we're looking at as well. So we have there on the right-hand side the coaching skills of active and reflective listening, the asking powerful questions, and the summarising. And of course, as well as active and reflective listening, you're also listening and observing. So you're suspending judgment, parking your own thoughts, and trying to identify the client's preferred communication style, whether that's visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And you're observing things like body movement, all of those non-verbal attributes, how they're sitting, how they're speaking, what sort of mood are they in, are they feeling like, do you think they're feeling anxious? And all of this, of course, is just assumptions on your part until you start to ask the right questions and ask them to clarify how they're feeling. So when you're asking powerful questions, you're also asking open and closed questions, first of all, and that's asking and affirming in lots of ways, which you were doing in your coaching sessions today, affirming that the unconditional positive regard for the person, always there with them, and looking to get that deep structural learning. So when we were doing the program last week, we could have just continued doing coaching on the surface, but I was able to show them a way that you can go deeper. You can listen, you can observe, you can empathise with people. You can actually ask those powerful questions, which takes them into a deeper, I never thought about that. That's a good question. All those sorts of responses that you get when you know they're thinking. And of course, then you have to sit in silence, which is sometimes hard. However, we know as a coach that if we're doing all the talking, we're not doing a good job. It's really up to the client to do most of the talking. And thirdly, when we're summarising, we're trying to use their language without introducing other words, which may then put the client onto another track. But we can introduce our own words with permission, as I know you asked the client today to use permission, which is great, particularly if you get insight. So my rule of thumb is like this: if I have a thought that I think something's going on, I'll think it once and then it'll come back to me and then it'll come back. And on the third time, I'll say to the client, look, I'm getting something here that I'd just like to check out with you. I wonder if I could have your permission just to put something to you to see if it works for you. Because what I was talking to them about was trying to get the client to move into the grey area. So instead of being, here's number 1 and here's 100, and there's nothing in between, so it's right or wrong, black or white, we need to help them move into the greys, where there are all sorts of possibilities and opportunities for ambiguity to happen, where we get them using NLP techniques of, would you consider this? I wonder what would happen with that. What if? All those areas in the grey. So that's where you want to lead the client, because when you get into the grey area, they know then that it's not right or wrong. It's just different. So we use that language to clarify the situation and what they need, to reframe any negatives into positives before we get going or as the need arises, and to explode those limiting beliefs. And when we were doing some exercises last week, it became clear that, following through the coaching process, that if we didn't explode the limiting belief pretty much up front, when you get to the end, you've got a different sort of problem. You haven't actually addressed the problem at all. You've addressed the surface issue problem, but not the real underlying problem. Now, of course, that may happen at times until the client is confident in the space and the relationship is good, the rapport is good. It may happen there. But in any case, as long as you go through those steps in the coaching process, and if this comes up, you go and you start all over again, and you really want that. So, any questions on that?
No, it's good.
Okay. Now, here's our coaching model that we're going to put up as an alternative to grow. So it is a critical issue. So here is, instead of finding out about the problem, because F doesn't work with C as a coach, it's what's the critical issue? And what we're doing in the revised course is we're having not just the problem, but the goal. So the critical issue may be, yes, a problem to be solved, but the critical issue could be a goal to be achieved. So when you're dealing with your client in the next episode, the next coaching session, we're going to be talking about what's the critical issue? Well, it's how can you convert the business that you've had and have had for 5 years or whatever into a new enterprise. That'll be working better for you financially. That will be still within your passion, or even further into your vision, as she was expounding it today. Now, what's that critical issue we need to address? And it's not in line with what's the most important thing we should be talking about today? Okay? So whether it's a problem to be solved or a goal, it doesn't matter. The O is for opportunities. So in there is the compelling vision. What's the compelling vision for the future, and what are the opportunities moving forward? Either to resolve that problem or that situation, or to find out how we can make our future much more opportunistic, much more worthwhile, much more satisfactory and fulfilling to us. What are the opportunities out there? Or the opportunities internal to us, as your lady is going to find out. What's her internal resources that she can put forward to starting or diverting her energies within her current business to something new. The third one is A, COA, actionable goals. We couldn't have a G there, so we've got an actionable goal. So it's the same as we've got now. We've got goals and actions all in one segment. So this is actionable goals. What are the goals we can put forward, the SMART goals, that we can then create as actions, just like you did today. I listened to your recording with your client. The next level is C for commitment. I don't know whether you asked her about her level of commitment. I think it was implicit in what you were doing with her. But if you do get a client who's a bit, I'm not quite sure whether this is going to work or not, of course you would really go into that 1 to 10 scale. How committed are you to resolving this issue or achieving this goal? And then if they're not at an 8 or a 9, how would you get them up to being a 10?
I guess in that regard, what we did is we were working what could be considered over these next fortnight, what would be the best course of action that would start to discern, which business direction might be the best one. Yeah,
that's right. Okay. And so what we want to do is hold our role as a coach is to help hold the client accountable. So that's where the H comes, hold accountable. And it's a big measure of, what have you done? What is the result? Oh, you haven't done it. So what happened? And a lot of the conversation last week was about, why didn't you do it? And I said, well, let's not talk about why. Let's talk about what and how. What happened and how did that come about? So, for example, if the client says, I had visitors all last week or my in-laws came to stay, that could be put as a why, as an excuse, as a blame or an externalisation of their responsibility. But really they need to hold that responsibility and themselves accountable. So it's what happened? Well, yes, you had relatives come to stay. How did that take over your time? Okay, so let's ask a what and a how as opposed to a why.
Yeah, with that, what we'll often ask is if a client says something that we know is an excuse, and I say, well, you've got to be careful if you excuse yourself and give yourself permission to lie.
Yeah.
But if you've got a reason, well, that's genuine. You can't. You can manage reasons, but if you get excuses, you're just giving yourself permission to lie. So.
Yeah, I'd even challenge that Ian and saying, well, if you have a reason, have a look at whether they're externalising the reason or internalising it.
Yeah.
If it's something that they're trying to blame somebody that didn't have the right information, they didn't turn up on time, are they denying there's a problem? Are they trying to justify what they haven't done or whatever? So just be a bit cautious around that one too, I think.
Sure.
And then when we move into the executive coaching, what we're talking about is helping people become strategic leaders, okay? And looking at the characteristics of strategic leaders. So one of which, of course, is strategic thinking. If they can't take themselves out of the day-to-day and sit above it all and start to look at the strategic direction of the firm and what they're doing to help move the organisation forward, then, of course, they're not really in the realms of the C-suite or the executive at this point in time. So one of our roles as an executive coach is to help them take that higher order, that chunking up. What's the purpose? What's the intention? What's the higher order purpose for doing the sort of things that you're doing in your job that will help the organisation achieve their higher order targets and outcomes?
Yeah.
Another big one, of course, is critical analytical ability. At that level, you have to be able to juggle all the data, all the knowledge, the internal knowledge, the external industry knowledge, and think critically about what does it mean to us? What does it mean to the organisation? How is that going to help us move forward? How does it give us information about the competitors? And in the unit of study, you'll see that there's there's prescriptive data, which describes what's happening. There's predictive data, which describes what might happen in the future. Okay, so there's another level of data as well. Just escapes me at the moment. So we're looking at, thinking things through. Of course, saying yes more often than no, but having people come on board who can say, yes, I'm going to help you with that, rather than saying no all the time.
Yep.
Strategic decision making is the other one, when we're juggling everything on our plate. What's important? What do we need to attend to now? This is where time management comes back in a lot of the time, that good old time management. And we might look at criteria for decision making. We also look at root and branch decisions, and we look at whether the decision could be consultative, collaborative, or whether it should simply be made as an executive decision. So those sort of criteria as to what kind of decision it is, and who's the best person or people to be involved, if at all, depending on the kind of decision that it is. And that's a way that executive leaders can get their people involved, and they're not seen to be dictators or just leading from the front and not involving all their staff.
Yeah.
Creative, innovative thinking, of course, is another one. We have to have people at the top who are thinking outside of the square, who are looking at the horizon and looking at the industry and looking overseas. And more it's about the global marketplace. The world is pretty big, but it's growing smaller and smaller with the advent of the internet. We're looking at MNC, multinational corporations, airline travel, for example, all of those things. Us, making the world smaller and much more opportunistic in terms of where we can get our information from. And lastly, of course, we need ethical and moral judgment, and that goes without reason. And as I was saying to our group last week, if you find a client who is acting unethically or immorally, and you need to challenge that and say to that person it's not on, and you either change your behaviour or I don't coach you. I'm not the coach for you. I'm sure you would agree with that. And that's, of course, along the lines of the ICF as well. So we're looking at developing strategic leaders, and we're using our executive coaching model to do so. There's also in that unit some characteristics of strategic leaders as well, which I haven't gone into at the moment. But we'll talk about that next webinar, maybe.
Yep.
Any thoughts, questions about any of that?
Yeah, it's really interesting too that, like, the ethical and moral judgment. One of the things I've just recently had to go through with one of our clients is that they're extremely generous, and particularly towards their daughter, but their generosity has overcome their ability to be able to pay their own costs.
Right.
So therefore, what we use something called a clever model, but just in that, it's just bringing her back to capacity and helping her understand that the business has now in jeopardy of being able to reach its capacity to pay its bills.
Yeah.
Even though what you've done is generous, you've been generous with the company's money, not your money.
That's right.
And their moral and ethical judgments that have got to be made, even though they seem right in the moment, they're not right.
No.
They're actually jeopardizing her ability to ultimately earn enough money from the company to do the things she wants, just for a kind of a step that she's taken now. So it's an interesting one to cross that one, because I would encourage everyone to be generous, but this generosity is beyond her capacity. So
that's right. Generous within the means that you have available to you personally.
Yeah, from surplus,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And what you're also pointing out is the fact that when you're coaching, there's always a personal element, usually a personal element involved in the coaching as well as the professional element.
Yes. Yeah.
And so you need to deal with both of those at the same time. And I guess that's where, the loving coach comes in, the unconditional positive regard, not accepting their behaviour as the right way to go, but steering them towards a better outcome that will fit for them and their daughter. And you'll know how to do that, obviously, from the units that you've just been doing in learning how to be a coach. And now you're going to learn how to coach at the leadership and the executive levels.
Yep.
All right. Well, we might leave it there, Ian, if that's anything else from you.
No, there's might just be something that I just share off the recording.
All right. Well, I'll go and we'll close the recording. Thank you for being on the webinar tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you next month.
Yep.